If you want to use our Welsh language service, please press 9. If not, please hold. We don't audio record calls to this helpline. For information about what we do with personal data, please visit our website at ico.org.uk/privacy-notice. Our helpline is for organisations, people who work for themselves, and for members of the public. Please note, we will treat all people with courtesy and respect, and we expect the same. If anyone behaves in an unreasonable way to our staff, we will bring the call to a close. To help get you through to the right team, please select from the following 3 options. If you know the extension number of the person you want to speak to, please press 1. If you're calling from an organisation, a small club or association, you're a sole trader, or you work for yourself, please press 2. If you're a member of the public, please press 3.
Press 3.
Here are your 3 options. To discuss an inquiry or complaint you've already sent to us, please press 1. To discuss a new inquiry or complaint with us, please press 2.
Press 2.
We're now transferring you to a member of our team.
Good afternoon, Information Commissioner's Office. How can I help?
Good afternoon. Can I ask who I'm speaking to?
Yeah, it's Sabrina.
Hi.
How can I help?
Hi. I'm a member of the public, and I'm making some general inquiries today, looking to find some further information. I hope you can assist. My inquiries relate to making a data subject access request, and what I would like to find out is that once I've made a subject access request, and following making the first subject access request and the organization's compliance, if I could then make a second subject access request for let's just say after 6 months, because there's been further data collected, under what aspect of the legislation can the organization state that because we've already made a disclosure beforehand, we're not going to make that disclosure, but we're going to make from your previous disclosure? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so basically they're saying that anything that they've provided you before,
Yeah.
from that
Yeah.
from that time up until you make your second SAR, that's the only information they will provide you with. They won't provide you with what they provided you with before.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
I understand that if this was a freedom of information request, the freedom of information request in legislation states that if information previously been made available, it does not need to be made available. I understand that, because that is something completely different. Freedom of information is completely different compared to subject access requests. And so therefore there is a specific, I am aware that there is a specific aspect in the Freedom of Information Act legislation stating that if information is already available or being made available, it's not, there's no, it's not necessary for it to be made available again. What I'm looking for is equivalent to that provision in the in the Data Protection Act.
I'm just checking for you actually, because I'm just looking at the legislation now just to see. Let me just look through and come back to you. I'm just going to pop you on
Yeah, that's fine.
hold for
That's fine.
a couple of minutes. Thank you. Hi there.
Yes.
I've got someone just trying to find the specific guidance, but so far from what you're saying, it's, I mean, it would really depend on how quickly and how much new data is being produced during that sort of 6-month time period. If it's the case where the information is basically the same, then I suppose the organisation could argue that it's not changed, and they'd look at the request as being potentially manifestly excessive if you're asking for the same information just 6 months later. But
Okay, okay. I'm fully familiar with the manifestly unfounded and manifestly excessive exemption. I fully understand that, but what I'm trying to determine is the exemption or the guidance where equivalent to the Freedom of Information Act, where you know, let me illustrate my point. I think a little bit better because the Freedom of Information Act looks to make public information published. So, for example, if there's an organization that's collecting data and through the Freedom of Information Act, that information is not in the public domain, but the Act permits the organization to publish that information. So, therefore, if somebody else makes a second request, or if you make a second request for it, the exemption kicks in saying, well, we've already published this information, so we don't need to publish, we don't need to comply with the FOI request. However, when we're talking about subject access requests, you know the information is individual specific and um, individual specific, and therefore, if the individual wants that information, it should be provided. Now, let me give you an example. The difference between the Information Act and the SAR request. So let's just say, for example, and I'm just giving a hypothetical example here. Let's say you're at work and there's a CC and the camera is recording you whilst at work. So you then make a subject access request for your own recordings. Now, the difficulty that your organization has is collating and extracting that information. That's the most difficult aspect of it. So, for example, you make a subject access request for your video recordings or through CCTV. Your organization is now going to have to go troll through all the video recordings and extract your information, which they have to comply with because that's your data. That's the most difficult aspect of it. Once they have extracted your data, then it's like they've already done that and they made that available to you. Now, if for example 6 months later you were to make, well, you're still at the organization and you want to make a second subject access request where you have been recorded as well, they can reasonably say, well, we've already provided that information to you, and under discretion say that we're only going to provide you with the further 6 months of your recording. Because the difficult aspect is the previous first request already did the most hard work, which was troll through the recordings and extract your information. In the second request is asking the same thing to go troll through the recordings and extract your information, but there is no reasonableness for them to deny you the first request. And the simplest fact is this, that whereas the FOI information looks to publish information, it's reasonable for you to say, no, I want you to provide me with all recordings 6 months later, including the first recordings, because I'm then going to make an argument that should you be retaining my those first recordings 6 months later. So there is an aspect where I, as a subject access requester, have the ability to say, well, is the information that you're holding about me proportionate to what you're trying to achieve? Now, if I make a second subject access request and the organization's argument is, well, we've already disclosed that information to you and we're not willing to disclose that information again to you at a different point in time because we've already made that disclosure to you. There's some sort of, I feel there's some sort of confusion there because I'm not asking for information to be published. 6 months later, I'm making the request and I want all the information, including any previous information, because I want to make sure that according to the organization's policies, that if their retention policies that we only retain certain information for a month, and then if I make a subject access request 6 months later, I need to know that they're not still holding the information. So that's why my argument would be that if I make a second subject access request 6 months later, they cannot say it's manifestly excessive, or not even saying that that's an exemption for not complying, but they cannot even say that we're not going to disclose previous information, because as you can appreciate, there's whereas in the FYI request, information is made public and needs to be published, in the subject access request, I need to determine that maybe I make a request 2 years later and they give it, we've already disclosed that information to you. That's not the point of disclosing the information to be making me aware of it. The point is that is the organization still retaining that information? So that's why I was trying to find out the specific exemption in the Data Protection Act. Because if I make a second subject access request, you can't say, well, we've already published your information. It's not about publication, it's about retention. And I need to know 6 months later that the CCTV recordings of yourself at work, or you need to know that CCTV recordings of yourself at work are being removed 6 months later, because according to your organization's policy, it may be that they only hold your CCTV recordings for 1 month. Whereas if you make a second subject access 6 months later, and they say we're not going to disclose that further information to you because we've already made it published. That's not the point. The point is that, are you still holding that information? So therefore, that was the reason I was asking for the specific exemption, because my understanding is that that would be a logical fallacy to state that, because we've already published that information, we don't need to do it again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it does make complete sense. I know exactly what you're asking for now. The thing is, I mean, it looks like there isn't an exact guidance. I asked a colleague to sort of look into it whilst I'm on the phone with you.
Okay.
And he was unable to look at an exact guidance on this. But it looks like, and particularly if it's 6 months later, if the information is sort of updating regularly, like CCTV footage, obviously the CCTV footage, if it's operating within a business, updating all the time, there's new data all the time.
Yes.
So, but if it's CCTV footage that we're looking at specifically, I know you said you're giving it as an example, but
Yes.
they, in accordance with their retention policy, in accordance with their CCTV policy, they should be deleting that data every 30 days.
Yes.
As an example.
Yes.
But I understand what your point is, that you're basically trying to find out whether they are still retaining that footage or not, or information, whatever the case may be.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate the fact that you're trying to. The thing is, if they start receiving multiple requests, they can just put it down to, you said before, it being manifestly excessive.
I understand.
For whatever reason. They can't just ignore your request.
Okay, all right.
And they should really deal with it as a new request. It's 6 months
Yes,
later.
that's
the
right.
Information will have changed.
Yes. So for example, when I make a subject access request, because obviously I'm trying to avoid this exemption, all right. So one of the reasons, obviously, this is I believe they use a manifestly excessive or manifestly unfounded as subjective to them. So what they decide. So for example, if I never, when I make a subject access request, I never make a piecemeal subject access request. So for example, I can say, well, today I'm going to make a request for the CCTV footage, and the next, a month later, I'm going to make a request for my different, like my wages information, and that so what I do is, whenever I make a subject access request to an organization, I make the caveat that I'm making full, complete, and comprehensive disclosure. So I want everything. So that avoids me from making numerous requests. So my,
and that's being compliant with legislation.
That's right. So if I make, like, for example, if I make a subject access request like in January for full, complete, and comprehensive information, and then I make a next second, because the still ongoing data being collected, and I make a second subject access, let's say in October, all right, for full, complete, and comprehensive. They can't say then, well, because we know that we already complied with the request in January, we're only going to give you the 9 months or 10 months information. That's irrelevant, because it's a new point in time. It's a brand new subject access request, and it's a full, complete, and comprehensive. And the work, you've already done half the work. all right, because because every time somebody makes a subject access request, there has to be a process that's followed, and no doubt before the subject data is disclosed, there has to be like a thorough process to make sure that no other third party information is being released or is being appropriately redacted. So therefore, there's already that body of work that you've done, all right, that you need that most likely needs to be retained, all right. And so therefore, it's easier on your part, but simply saying the fact that, well, no, we complied in January, so everything before that we're not going to disclose to you or publish to you because we've already published it. There seems to be some sort of crossover confusion here, because a freedom of information request is completely different. It's all about getting the organization to publish information that it has not already published. And so therefore, I'm just trying to understand if there's been some confusion between the two legislations, because quite rightly in the FOI requests, organizations who have previously gone through the effort of publishing work should not be then forced to go through the effort a second time to publish them. They can just say, look, we published it, so there you go, we've already done it, so that exemption applies. That same exemption, it does not carry over to the Data Protection Act, because in the Data Protection Act, I'm not looking to get you to publish information. I'm looking to see what you retain and to ensure that it's appropriate. So when I make my second subject access request for full, complete, and comprehensive information, full information should be disclosed to me, irrespective of what you previously disclosed. And obviously, it helps you because you've already retained that information. But when I make a second subject access request in a different point of time, let's say in October, then it should be once again full, complete, and comprehensive, and irrespective of my previous request, because the second request can only be considered manifestly excessive or manifestly unfounded if I make the declaration it is. Making a second subject access request where information is still continuing to be collated, therefore it's not manifestly excessive or manifestly unfounded.
Because there's new data.
Yeah, there's no new data.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And obviously, I've already received advice from yourself that if it's manifestly unfounded, I have to show that it's manifestly unfounded. And one of the grounds that it cannot be manifestly unfounded is because you're still collecting more data. I'm just looking for the exemption in the Data Protection Act that says that we have already disclosed information till January, and we therefore are not obliged to disclose that information again to you.
As far as I can see, there's no such exception.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Only whether they decide to deem it manifestly unfounded or excessive, then they would have to prove to the ICO as to why it is.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now, that helps me very much. Now, I'm just conscious of the fact that this call is not being recorded by you.
No.
Okay. I'm making you aware that I have recorded this conversation, and I've done that simply for my guidance and advice. Do you have an issue with this?
No, but I wish you would have told me at the beginning. But no, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. No issue at all.
Okay. Now I'm going to use this information to direct it to the organization. Would you have an issue with this?
Passing on the recording to the organization.
That's correct. Yes.
I mean,
because the
to be honest, I've never been asked this before.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but obviously you've been very helpful. You've not done anything wrong. All right. And the reason I didn't inform you at the start of the conversation is because as a private citizen, I'm not obliged to inform you. I can covertly record our conversations because I'm not a data collector. I'm not under the Data Protection Act.
Yeah.
If it assists you, the organization that I'm going to be disclosing this information to is the Information Commissioner's Office.
Right. Okay.
So basically, what the reason I'm making yourself aware is that I've made a subject access request with the Information Commissioner's Office, your organization, all right. And that's the example that's the excuse that you've given me that we're not going to comply previously. And secondly, I've made the same request to the other organization that I'm going to be disclosing this to is the Care Quality Commission, who have used the same argument. And I just wanted to make you aware that first of all I've been recording this information, and second of all that I'm going to be looking to disclose this recording to those organizations. And if you have an issue with that, please can you tell me what issue you have?
Okay, as I said, I've not been asked this before, so I
Can you ask a colleague? Can you ask somebody, your supervisor, that this is the situation?
Yeah. Just bear with me 1 second. Yeah,
Okay.
I will do. Thanks. Okay, hi there.
Yes, hello.
Hi, sorry for keeping you.
It's okay. It's all right. I understand.
On duty.
I understand my
I
request
just
is
because
novel.
yeah, I've not come across it before. In all fairness, so
Yeah.
that's why I wasn't sure of the protocol. So I just wanted to make 100% sure, obviously, before
Yes.
I continue. No issue with your recording. No issue in you using the recording by any means. And obviously, just to clarify, like with any subject access request, if there is new data, you know, they should comply with the request. If they're not going to comply with the request, and for any reason an organisation deems it to be manifestly unfounded or unreasonable in any way or excessive, they cannot ignore, the organisation can't ignore the request. They should explain to you if no further processing has taken place, then they need to explain they're only processing your request and there's no further personal data being generated or collected. But if there has been, then they should treat it as a new request.
Okay. Like for example, if I make a request, and we're going back to our example, if I make a request in January for all my data, there's been no further data generated. I make a second request in October. They are within their rights to make the argument that that's manifestly excessive because we've already complied.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if
yes, that's right.
so that they're within their rights, and I accept that because there would be no reason for me to make a second subject access request in October where previously I made one in January and I've received everything. There's been no further information, and if I'm making a second request in October, it can be seen as malicious. All right, and therefore the legislation makes provisions to ensure that can be classed as manifestly excessive. I understand that. The question was this: that if I make a request in January and it's complied with, and further information is collated and collected up until October, and when I make my second request, the question they have to first of all they have to comply from January to October. But the question was this: that can they ignore what information they previously provided according to the legislation? And you've informed me that basically the second subject access request in October, if it's established as not being manifestly unfounded or manifestly excessive, then it should be blind to the first request, and full compliance should take place. Is that correct? Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
sorry, you just cut off there. So the question was this: is that if the second request in October, example, is established as not being manifestly unfounded and excessive, so it's going to be complied with. There is no exemption that says that they don't have to disclose everything that they previously disclosed.
No, there's no exemption.
That's correct.
That I'm aware of.
That's correct. That's all I was trying to establish. So.
Okay.
So thank you very much, and you have absolutely no issue with me disclosing this recording to other people. So just for information purposes, and it basically saves them time ringing you up. I mean, if I've got a recording of this and I'm trying to make this point, they can be fully aware of this. Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you very much. You've been most helpful. Thank you. Have a nice day. Happy Christmas and a Happy New Year.
You too. Thanks for the call.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.